Hello everyone, welcome to Mistakes Were Made and welcome back to the dining room table. Today we are going to be doing our budget recap for the second pay period of February, as well as do a monthly typical recap to see where we are with debt, with the job loss savings, etc. Now, of course, as you can tell probably from the title, we do have updates on where things stand with the job, along with some other things. As in all things, there is a balance of blessings and not so blissful things. So let's just get started and we'll see what we have to discuss. I'm going to zoom on in. And this was a heck of a pay period. Let me just tell you that. We had a lot of unexpected things happen during the 16th through the 28th time frame. So talking about blessings, the first one we are going to cover has to do with the income side of things. We really kind of blew this up. Now, that's not too terribly hard to do because we were using just the bare minimum expectations because we hadn't seen any pending amounts for what we could expect for our paychecks at the time of doing the budget with me, but there was some significant differences. So first one is, let me get in here, Mr. M's pay ended up being $4,778.86. Mine ended up being $2,301.39. We then also had some miscellaneous unexpected income in the amount of $188.22. We had a very small Etsy sale, which resulted in $1.04. And then, of course, the buffer rollover. There was a change there. It ended up being $200.07. So let's do the math really quickly, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the details. I should warn you, this is probably going to be a little bit longer of a video, just because we've got a lot of things that were unexpected that happened to kind of go over. So, oopsie. Let's get these added up. 2301.39 plus 188.22 plus, oh darn it, plus $1.04 plus $200.07, which comes to a total of a very healthy $7,469.58. Okay, so to what do we owe this bounty? Well, you can believe that when Mr. M's paycheck came in, we were both like, what? Now, mine was a little bit more understandable. The paycheck that pays for this pay period is the one where if I'm getting an incentive, that's where it'll show, when it'll show up. So that wasn't too unusual, but this one had us very caught off guard. And so he went and he looked at his paycheck, and what we had forgotten was around this time is when his company does a review of everybody's PTO balances. If you have a balance over 160 hours, whatever that excess is, they pay that out around this time. Now, if you were with us this time last year, you know that that process happened, but they had a little bit of a snafu and they paid us too much. And the way that they resolved that was for a period of 4 pay periods, they reduced his pay by $250 because they had overpaid us by $100. So luckily, just like now, we were kind of confused as to why we had seen an infusion of money that we weren't expecting. So we put the money, what we considered to be the extra aside to into one of our savings accounts. And once everything was, explained and figured out, and it did it was determined an error was made, we were able to pull money from that money that we had set aside to kind of backfill the $250 that was removed, so that his pay stayed relatively the same to what we had been expecting before. So we just kind of used it as a little mini job cushion. This time, the numbers all looked like they were good. He went and he looked at his PTO balance. It was at 160 hours. He looked to see what his PTO balance was before the paycheck, and it was well over 160. I think it was like a payment of like 120 hours or something like that. I don't remember the exact amount. So everything looked like it should be fine. What we decided was we would give it, about a work week before, assuming that all was good, because in that time period, if an error had been made, they should figure it out by then, and then we would know, okay, we're going to have to hold off on utilizing any, of this excess. But luckily, nothing like that happened. So we felt comfortable, doing what we needed to with the money at the time. A couple days later, after his paycheck came through, another deposit from his work came in. And once again, we're like, wait, what? And so, and that's what this was this $188. That actually ended up being one of the bonuses that he is eligible for, that got paid out. He wasn't expecting it, so, it was a surprise. But it also sparked us to check on something else because, and I think I mentioned this in a previous video, hopefully I'm remembering that correctly. There is a bonus that he was previously eligible for, or, part of that program that they were phasing out. And so the expectation was they were going to compensate for removing it by giving everybody a little bit of a raise. So when we were looking at all of the hoopla and all of this stuff, he did look between this paycheck and the last paycheck, and he did notice that his pay has increased by roughly $1 or so, $1.04 or something like that per hour. So we determined, or we're making the assumption, because he didn't, as far as he knows, get any official notification, that adjustment is because they were phasing out this other bonus. So the place that he works definitely has its perks. I will say that. So there you go. We've got a marvelous and unexpected income that we are working with for this pay period. So now the next thing that ends up being what I would consider a blessing in disguise, it falls within our expenses. So first we will fill in the information for the things that did not change, like the health care, the electric bill, Comcast was $104. Now Google Fi, I don't know where my brain was when I was doing the budget with me. I was thinking that we had regularly been getting bills for $91.32, but it was actually $90.32. So that's what this one was. The gas bill, thank goodness, was well under $200. Dropping the thermostat down to 61 definitely had the positive impact we were hoping, even if it wasn't the most comfortable to be living under, and it ended up being $174.20, which leaves us with the mortgage. Now, as I had mentioned, our mortgage holder does an assessment every year to determine if we have enough money in the escrow account, or if we will have enough money in the escrow account to account for what they expect our homeowners insurance and our property taxes to cost in the new year. And as a general rule, there will be a discrepancy. This year was no different. And so there were a couple of options on what we could do. We could either absorb that extra cost, so the discrepancy was $500 and something. We could absorb that and pay it over the course of 12 months. So each payment, since we do an auto payment every 2 weeks, it ends up being 2 payments a month, would be a little bit higher than it is now. That would mean that our base mortgage cost would go up. Right now it's $17.35 and 11 cents. So it would go up from there, which would then of course mean that our monthly per pay period charge would either increase to accommodate that adjustment upwards, or if we reset everything because we wanted to maintain $875, which we would be able to do in this scenario, it would mean that the little bit of extra that we're currently paying towards principal every month, it's about $14 and some change, that would get reduced each pay period or each month, and it would be less than that. Like it would drop down to, I don't even remember if it was like $9 or $8 or something like that. That's option number one. Option number two is we could just pay that extra amount outright. And if we do that, then it actually had the effect, and I don't understand the math on this and how it works, but according to them, it would mean our monthly payment would actually get reduced down to $1,702 and some change. So suffice to say, we went with option two. And so we aren't going to technically see that reduction. We are going to maintain our $875 payment, but what it will mean is there's going to be a larger difference between how much we are paying each month, because if we only need to pay $1,702 a month and we are still maintaining a payment of $1,750, then now the amount that's going to principal each month automatically is around $47-ish, whereas before it was only $14. So we jumped at that, especially because we did have some extra money. So the total that we ended up paying was $875 plus $536.88. $536.88 for a total of $1,411.88. So I am actually quite pleased that we went that route. Every little bit that we can put towards the principal is great, and the fact of the matter is this is going to just continue to be an automatic payment. So this is an automatic process that's going to happen. We don't have to remember to put extra. And it may be just pennies and a few dollars here and there, but it all helps. So let's add all of this together. Let's see. Can we do it that way? Well, we already see this 1411. So we've got 206.28 plus 164.67 plus 174.20 plus $104 and $90.32, which gives us a total of $2,151.35. Now we're going to subtract that from our 69.58, which gives us a remainder of 53.18.23. Now again, emergency fund, $25 and $200 is our standard. So $225. Any adjustments that come because we have money left over, we will address that later. So we're going to just take this and take $225 from there. That puts us at $5,093.23. There were some changes here, but what we'll do is we will fill in all the stuff that's the same, and then we'll go over where we had differences. Oh, okay. Well, we will figure that out. I just noticed something that is different from the way my spreadsheet looks, and it kind of messes up the way I was going to document something. So, yeah, that's okay. We roll with the punches here. Okay, so we have everything here is the same, $12 and then 20. But one thing that we did that did cost extra, that we didn't particularly specifically budget for, but once we saw that we had some extra money, we decided, you know what, we're going to go for it, was the celebration for our anniversary. We went to a very nice restaurant. We had a very adult meal with adult drinks and, unfortunately, adult prices. And then the next day we did an outing where we went we drove up along the river, the Columbia River. We went over onto the Washington side, and we, did some different hikes. It was a very rainy day, but, I'm an Oregonian, born and bred, so I don't really mind rain when I'm out and about. We did visit a place called Cape Disappointment, and oh my goodness, I have never experienced wind gusts of the strength that we dealt with there. They do have a lighthouse there, and once we got down to where the lighthouse was, it really was kind of, you couldn't truly enjoy the lighthouse. You couldn't really truly enjoy the view of the ocean. It was incredibly rainy, but it was just the wind. I have never been in a situation where who is quite a sturdy gal, I am no slim miss, could literally lean into the wind with almost all my weight and not fall forward. That was how hard the wind was blowing. I've seen people do that, like in weather forecasts, the man on the street sort of things. And I was just like, I don't know if that's real. It's real. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. And this lovely couple of gals, they were coming towards us away from the lighthouse as we were heading down there, and they gave us a warning. They said, it is really, really windy down there. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. That was not enough warning to really tell us what we would be dealing with. We decided to go around, the circumference around the lighthouse. They had like a big, area, so you could hold a bunch of people out there. And then, of course, it's kind of on a cliff, so there was a fence. And I literally, it was blowing so hard. I literally was holding on, here's a fence. I'm holding on. And then I'd move and I'd grab the next one, and I'd grab to get, around the perimeter. And that's with one hand. The other hand I had on my glasses, because I do wear glasses, and I was legitimately afraid that there might be a wind gust hard enough that it would blow them right off my face. I was really hoping that I would be able to do, take maybe a couple of pictures with my phone. There was absolutely no way I was taking that sucker out of my pocket. It was an interesting experience. I'm glad that we did it. We were laughing to ourselves about, getting blown off the cliff, which, that morbid humor, just because it was so ridiculous trying to navigate and move through the wind gusts. I think what we were experiencing at the time was the precursor to the wind and thunderstorm that ended up hitting where we lived, which it was a number of miles away, the next day. And in fact, that next day we had 2 tornado warnings in our county, which is very unusual. That's not a thing in Oregon in general, and definitely not in the metro area. So I think we were seeing, the start of that storm getting up to speed and experienced that. So it was interesting, but we had a great time, but it was a little expensive. We spent a little money. And what I was going to do before I forgot that I had covered the dining out with the Costco run was I was going to break up the cost that we spent between those two events, between dining out and entertainment. But entertainment is all we have room for, so we spent $160 all told for both of those. All right, so now we are going to add all of this up. 13, 15, 25, 10, 100, 160, 30, 100, 5. What are we looking at here? Oh, I was getting myself confused about what some of these dollar amounts were for. 200 plus 15 plus 30 plus 11 plus 125 plus 12 plus 20 gives us $871. Okay, and then we'll subtract that from our 5093.23, which you can't see. There it is. And that leaves us with 42223. Okay, where are we now? Now we are going to move that 422 to 23 up there. We're not going to do anything with the car loan until we get all this done. I did stay on budget for my spending, so we'll subtract 30 from there. It's 4, 2, 5, 2, 23. I think we've got something that's not right. I'm gonna keep going. We had the second of two payments of $100 for the gardening season, which should bring us down to $41.52.23, but something's wrong because that number doesn't match where it should. Okay, so I'm going to pause you really quickly to see where I made my mistake. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am such a dumbie. I figured out where I made the error. Instead of subtracting $30 from the $442.22, I must have hit add. I was like, why is this more money than it should be? When I should have subtracted 30, which brings us to $41.92.23. You get the 100 off of that, and that becomes $40.92.23. Okay. Whew. All right. So even though we have a significant amount of money in comparison to what we were expecting, the basic rules or processes are going to be in place. First and foremost, while I am still working and we are bringing in money rather than taking money out of the job loss fund, $100 goes to it. So that's still what happened. We made an amazing $3,990 payment towards the car. So let me 23 subtract the 100, 3,990. We did transfer that little $2 to the emergency fund, and that leaves 23 cents for the buffer rollover. So, yeah, we were not expecting to be at this point where we are having this big chunk of money right now to be able to put towards a car. It's an amazing thing. And I do need to stop and say, if you watched my budget with me for the first pay period of March, I had a very, very incorrect expectation for how much we still needed to pay on the car when I was doing that that video, and especially when we were doing the job breakdown or the money breakdown at the end. For some reason, I was thinking that we still had like $4,600. And so that's why I made I put forth the expectation that wasn't necessarily thinking it was likely we would be paying the car off at the end of February, but that there were two much more likely scenarios. One being we would be able to pay the car off, and in the first pay period of March, where Mr. M's standard $400 a month payment would, satisfy what's left of the debt, or there was the possibility that we would need that $400 plus some of whatever is left over at the end of the pay period from just standard funds, left, like a $1,500, $1,600, whatever it was at the time. That those were the two scenarios, and they seemed, in my mind, they were equally as likely because I was going off the incorrect remembrance that there was about $4,500, $4,600 still left to pay off. I should have looked at all of my numbers before I did the video because I was very far off. How far off was I? Let's take a look at the actual numbers, but first we are going to fill this in. We have $100 here. We're doing an extra $2 for the emergency fund. Oh, and we've got the 23 cents for the buffer rollover, and then $3,990 for that. And I think that covers everything. Okay. Okay. So let's take a peek at our month in review, so to speak. Let's see. Nope, wrong direction. There we go. Okay, so we started February. I'm just gonna do this with $6,093.73 worth of debt on the car. We have ended the month with $100.62. So yes, I was very, very far off and where I thought we were at the time of doing the March budget with me. We did have to pay $21.89 worth of interest this month for a difference of $5,993.11. So we made an enormous amount of progress, and obviously the bulk of that was during this last pay period, and it is 1,000% because of that unexpected infusion of PTO money. So thank you, Mr. M, for not taking any PTO days, I guess, because that payoff was critical and very instrumental in us being to the point where there is only $100.62 left to pay the car off. Now, when we got close to the end of the month, I did ask Mr. M, I was like, okay, well, why don't you go and see what your payoff will be? Because we did have a decent infusion, and I was still, I was still thinking we had $4,600, and I did my video, and then the next day he's looking it up, and he's like, well, we're at XYZ, which I think at the time was the 4,093? Something like, 4,093 and some change. So of course I'm looking at that and I'm going, oh, you know what? If we hadn't spent $160 for our anniversary, we could have paid this off. And to be fair, we have money in sinking funds. We have money in an emergency fund. We could we could have even potentially borrowed from, March numbers to pay it off. But we wanted to stick to the budget as it fell out. And frankly, because he needed, oh, this man. So anyway, I got off track. I asked him to find out what the payoff would be. So he went online and he tried to get a payoff amount, and it told him that he would need to call in to get it because, they need to calculate the interest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when I was paying my car off, I don't know why the entity he's dealing with doesn't have this option, but I was able to, get a payoff amount, just do it online. And it was very clear. It said, your payoff amount is this if you pay it before, X date. If you don't pay it before X date, then you're going to need to get a new payoff amount because, interest is going to change the numbers. So once he found out he would have to actually call in, he was like, you know what? Why don't we just make as much of a payment as possible so that there's still money left over, and it will just be whatever my last payment is, we'll pay that off. So part of this is fortuitous that it is only $100.62 because he didn't want to have to deal with people. So I think he still needs to look to see if the payment amount has adjusted now that the payment has actually posted to the principal, et cetera, et cetera. Because when he looked at it last, the same day that we were checking to see what the amount would be, it was already showing that he needed to pay his standard, $400. So I'm hoping that will auto update, because obviously if you only have $100.62 plus maybe a little bit of interest for your principal, principal plus interest, then there's no reason why your payment should still show, around $400. So, but we'll see. He may be stuck having to call somebody. And I told him, I ain't doing it for you. I don't want to have to talk to people either. But anyway, so that it worked out. It ended up being a situation of, yes, I would have rather we could say, okay, this is done and can put 100% in February, but not so much that we were really willing to pull money from other things to pay it off. We're not losing really anything significant by waiting for his actual payment due date to pay off this last little bit. So there's that. That's where we are. So bottom line is, by the 15th of March, this will be paid off. Additionally, he made a $430-something payment on his credit card. That is now paid off. So again, by the 15th of March, once this is paid off, we will be able to officially say we are debt-free except for our house. That is a goal that we have wanted to get to. It's an interim goal, but it's a goal nonetheless. And it's really honestly one I did not think we were going to be able to see as soon as we are hitting it. So I am very excited. I feel very blessed about that. Next, we've got our job loss prep and the numbers for that. So for the PTO, I'm expecting a payout of roughly $8,954. The severance, $4,292. This actually shouldn't be with an asterisk. Again, if you're new here, the reason I have an asterisk next to these two is this is a guesstimate amount. I am expecting to have more gross, but what I have done is I took a percentage that I felt seemed reasonable and subtracted it from that gross amount to cover taxes, Social Security, all the normal things that they take out of income, to get these two numbers. So I don't know how close I am to the reality of what this is going to be. So I am keeping that as, a grain of salt and something to think about, that these numbers are not in stone. I could be very far off in either direction. I could be overestimating how much I'm going to get. I could be underestimating how much I'm going to get. I'm hoping that I'm pretty close, though. The number that we do know for sure is this $15,781.45. That is how much we have saved since we started this process back in October, specifically to help cover the loss of the income that I am currently receiving. And yes, we could have taken $100.62 out of here to pay this off, but we made the decision not to. So if you add all of that together, it comes to a total of $29,027.45. And then my share of the monthly budget is $2,200 a month. So if you divide this by the $2,200, we have roughly 13 months worth of coverage. 13 months for me to find a job that pays what we need it to pay so that we can continue to maintain the budget that we have in place. So hopefully that will be enough time. I am, of course, a little nervous now with all of the federal layoffs and all of that. That's going to be a number of qualified people who are now competing for similar jobs that I'm looking at, but it is what it is. So with this, as I mentioned in the title, I do have an official layoff date. So I'm not entirely sure when this video is going to be posted, but I'm pretty sure it will be before the actual layoff date, but it may only be a couple days before. I think I mentioned that there was going to be a board meeting during one of our previous videos, and that could have a significant impact on, what our expectations are on the job front. And it turns out that I was correct. Once they had that board meeting, a decision was made that, at least in our area, some reductions were going to be needed. They needed to reduce staffing by as much as they could, and still get whatever critical work done that needed to be done. So in assessing the folks that were still employed, it was determined that my department, with me included, the work that we were doing, while important, it wasn't stuff that they couldn't distribute to some of the other people who were staying on for even far more critical work, that bringing money in and things like that. So to that end, the entire department was advised that they would be laid off. Now, the board wanted us to get laid off on the 28th, so Friday. But my boss spoke up and said, that's not even 2 weeks, because I want to say the board meeting was like the 17th or 18th of February. So, that would have given a less than, or about 10 days if they notified us, immediately. So they did listen. They were like, okay, well, what do you suggest? And he tried to advocate for us. He suggested having us work through the end of March, but they were very much against that. They did not like that idea at all. And I don't mean to make this sound like they were against my department specifically doing that. I believe there are other people who are being laid off as well, but of course this is directly affecting us. So He then said, well, how about the 7th of March? Because that at least would give us at least 2 weeks. And that's like the minimum, bare minimum that people have been receiving. Most people have been getting about a month notice, but there have been a few that have gotten, about 2 weeks. So that is where it stands. My last day will be March 7th. That is coming up in a little less than a week as of the timing of when this video is being made. I've got some mixed feelings about it, but I'll be honest, I haven't really delved deeply into, the emotional, etc. impact yet. I've been very much, worrying kind of more about my employees and how they're handling it, trying to figure out, what are the very next steps that I need to be taking. I spent a good portion of Friday online reading through the unemployment handbook for Oregon, just trying to make sure I understand everything that I need to understand so I can get started as soon as possible and make sure I'm taking all the right steps so I don't jeopardize anything. Now, what are my plans for the future? My first and foremost, most important thing that I'm going to be doing is getting myself set up, enrolled in unemployment. I have read through, like I mentioned, stuff, and I know that there is a 1 week waiting period, but I also believe that if we were getting laid off on the Monday of the week that we're getting laid off, and I would be able to submit my application and submit, the required work that needs to be done to maintain an eligibility for getting the benefits for that week. And then that week I of course would not get paid for because that would be my waiting week. And then the next week, so I don't know, what is that, March 3rd would be that Monday. So the March 10th would then be that first week where I need to submit all of the stuff that needs to be submitted, but I'd actually get paid for that effort. Since the work week is Sunday to Saturday, my expectation is I'm getting laid off on that Friday. I should be able to, if I can, cram everything I need to get done to make sure I'm meeting the requirements done on that Saturday and get it all submitted. And that will still then count as my waiting week, because again, it's going to be that Sunday through Saturday. So then I should be able to start on March 10th and have that be a paid week. I could be wrong about how I'm assessing that, but that's how I'm going to go about it. And quite frankly, even if I make these efforts on that Saturday after the 7th, it's what am I losing? Maybe I'll find the job that I moved to in those efforts. Who knows? I will say that I am definitely going to ease into things. So I'm going to make sure I'm meeting my requirements, but at least for the first couple of weeks, I'm going to be taking it a little bit easy. This is going to be my opportunity to wind down, to not stress about things as best as I can, and to expect, to try and treat it as a vacation in as much as I can when I know I will have requirements that I still need to meet. And then it will be, time to do what I can to find a new job. So yeah, we will see. I'm very pleased that we do have this buffer here, because who knows how long it'll take. This does not include anything that I might be getting from unemployment. When that actually starts to come in, I'll probably, I would assume that the amount is going to be the same every time. I am going to request to have federal and state taxes taken out from the start, so I don't have to worry about, that come tax time. And then we'll see, what numbers we're looking at with that and incorporate that into the budget and go from there. Okay, like I said, this is going to be a long video. So if you're still with me, thank you. Next, we've got our emergency fund. So as of the end of February, we have $1,489.92. And, we got one more section. So one thing that we have been doing this so far is, for as long as I have income coming in and we're not pulling from this job loss bucket, we are putting $100 to the job loss fund. We, at least as far as I can tell, the first time we're going to start pulling money out of this is going to be the second pay period of March. So any time that we have any extra money, some might suggest that we reinvest it into the job loss fund. We're not going to do that. This is going to be a closed bucket with only money coming out, not money going in. Any extra money that we might want to put towards for potential extension of this will end up going into the emergency fund, because technically this is an emergency fund in and of itself. We're just naming the exact activity that we are paying for it with, or paying it with, whatever. I know what I'm trying to say, but it's not coming out right. So I figure if we put money towards the emergency fund that we would maybe have put into the job loss fund to extend its efficacy, we can always pull money out of here months down the line when we finally need to do that, if that becomes the case. So that's that. Next, we have YouTube revenue. So basically, we are going to look at what have I earned on YouTube since I became monetized. I was monetized November 18th, and as of February, I have finally hit the minimum threshold required to be able to receive a payout. That minimum threshold is $100. As of the end of February, I have an estimated $113.93 that would be eligible for payout. So that breaks down to November, I earned $7.71. December, I earned $60.19. $99.09. Oh wait, never mind. We'll discuss this in a second. January was $22.39, and then February. This number, I think it's finalized because we are now in March. But maybe it might shift a little bit, but it looks to be $23.65. So of this total, $99.93 have come from people watching the ads. And then we also received $14 in supers and gifts. So that is that. So that covers the entirety of February, the whirlwind that has been the second pay period in February. And it's going to be an interesting ride as we begin March. I'm not really sure what to expect. So it's going to be a learn as you go, I think, in a lot of situations. Keeping busy is going to be something that I'm going to have to figure out what to do. A lot of people have suggested, projects around the house and things like that, which that's definitely something I want to pursue, but I do have to be careful because with Mr. M working a night shift, I cannot make a lot of noise because I do not want to disturb him sleeping. He works a 12-hour shift and he needs to have as much uninterrupted rest as possible. So at least for the first half of the week, that puts a bit of a limit to some of the things that I can do, especially if you inside the house. Now we are getting into the early stages of the gardening season, so I do expect that I will be doing some outdoor stuff, a fair amount, and I'm very excited about that. We do have some seeds that we have started already. The cauliflower and the cabbage are starting to get their first real leaves. So I would say in probably a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit sooner than that, we might be able to get them planted out. I need to keep an eye on the temperatures. We do plan on planting some shelling peas in probably the next couple of weeks as well. Some onions too. We just planted 2 thimbleberries, which I got as bare root plants from a native plant sale here in town. I'm very excited about those. I hope that they will grow and thrive. We came across thimbleberries during a hike a couple of different times, and one of the most recent ones, they had a number of thimbleberries, along the path. And so we were kind of piggies and picked quite a few of them. And they were so, so good. But they're very, very delicate berries. And they've got just like this wonderful tartness, but it's like a perfect balance. And they kind of look like little raspberries, but they've got almost a fuzzy texture to the berry. So anyway, it was something that we were really curious about, whether they were considered natives to our area, or if they were something that was introduced. And apparently there are native thimbleberries. And so we were looking around at the time, this was back like last August, to see if there was a place that even sold them. And then lo and behold, we got our notification about the native plant sale for this entity that I follow, and they had thimbleberries in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're getting some. So we bought 3 plants. 2 of them we have planted already, and then 1 we're going to put in a larger pot with the intentions of planting it in ground. The 2 that we planted now, we put in one of our raised round beds. So we'll see how that goes. I'm very excited. I hope it turns out. Our fruit trees look like they're coming along pretty darn well. The Santa Rosa plum is already starting to get little leaves branching out. We've got what looks to be some pretty healthy nectarine and peach branches and stuff. We'll see. I still have yet to have any fruit come off of those that was edible. So I'm hoping, every year I'm hoping. One of the raspberries that I trimmed, I think I trimmed it too much, or I trimmed it wrong. So it may be done for, but our blueberries are looking great. And especially the newer ones, the ones that are like only 2, maybe even 3 years old at this point. They've done some pretty good growth, so I've got some high hopes for stuff coming from them. We've got a lot to look forward to as far as the garden is concerned, and I'm very excited about that. Anyway, I may need to figure out some new hobbies to keep me busy as well. I do have a little bit of a line on a job, not a job, but a company where people that I used to work with at my current company, 2 people that I very much enjoy, loved them. Neither of them were direct bosses. One was, and actually in both cases, they were my boss, my direct boss's boss. Wonderful, wonderful people. They have both moved to this company. And so I know that my current boss mentioned, that my layoff was coming up to one of those people, and they were like, oh, I'd love to have her, but I don't have a position. So I am going to, try and make contact, and hopefully they'll keep me in mind if something does open up. Especially because my understanding is the jobs are all remote. So that's something that these days is starting to be harder and harder to find. I have no idea exactly what department they cover, what kind of work would even be available, what the pay would be, benefits, or anything like that. But I very much admire and respect both of the people that are there, that I know of that are there. So for that alone, I would be very interested in seeing what they have available should something come up. I, of course, am not going to hold any expectations about anything either. And I'm not just going to sit and wait for something to open up there. I will be continuing to pursue, things as the days and weeks go on. So anyway, this has become an incredibly long video, so we are going to end it here. I am in good spirits despite, the sad things that are coming my way. But I have to say we have put ourselves in a really probably the best position we could, outside of maybe winning the lottery, to weather this situation. We'll see what the future has to bring, and we will, as always, roll with the punches as best as we can. So just like always, if you have any feedback, if there's any comments you want to make, if you have any suggestions, just want to say hi, please note those down below. And I hope we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.